Okay, so we are in the Parsha Bo. Okay, so let's start reading. The Lord said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order that I may place these signs of mine in his midst." By the way, here again we see over here that God gives a reason why he's hardening the heart of Pharaoh, so that he can withstand, right, these 10 plagues, and therefore, and so that God can actually fulfill these 10 plagues. So and in order over here, see, and in order that you tell into the ears of your son and your son's sons how I made a mockery of the Egyptians, and that you tell of my signs that I placed in them, and you will know that I'm the Lord. See? So this is the reason why God had to go through these 10 plagues and harden the heart of Pharaoh, so that the world from that point on gets convinced about God and His power.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're basically saying that God does not have lesser gods beneath him.
Of course not. Yeah, God is only one. There's only one
Okay,
God, right?
okay.
There's angels that but they all are under control of God.
Right. So angels, do they con- okay, so what does really angels do? Do they control certain parts of the world like the ocean? And the ocean have to listen to the angels, but the angels have to listen to God.
Something like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but the way I understand that every physical phenomena has a certain angel associated with it, like a spiritual side of that object. Whether it's ocean, the sun, and all these angels. They, in a way, I think, represent this object. Um, but they are all under the authority of God, meaning they don't have freedom of choice like the humans do. Okay, but
What's the diff-
uh-huh.
what's the difference between, because it seems like they are God.
Well, no, I wouldn't call them God, but they are called Elohim in Hebrew sometimes, which could mean angels. So it means, when we say, see the when we say God, I don't know what the English word God actually exactly means, but when we say in Hebrew, we have the word Elohim, which means sometimes it could refer to angels, sometimes it could refer to authority, leader, like I said about Moses, right? He's referred to Elohim, but sometimes it's referred to God Himself as well. That same word. But then there's also these certain names that only refer to God and nobody else, like the four-letter name, for example. So forget about the English language because it could be confusing. I don't know exactly what the English word God is supposed to mean. You know what I mean? Uh,
Like the big G is God, the main God, and the small G is like leaders
like,
and rulers and
mhm.
like you know
So in Hebrew,
authority
see, in
over.
Hebrew, there is no such thing as capital letters. If you notice over here,
Okay,
there's no, yeah. So therefore, in Hebrew, you cannot really use the uppercase or lowercase to differentiate.
I got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
no problem. All right. So Moses and Aaron um, came to Pharaoh and said to him, "So said the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, and they will worship me. For if you refuse to let them go, behold, tomorrow I am going to bring locusts into your borders, and they will obscure the view of the earth, and no one will be able to see the earth. And they will eat the surviving remnant which remains for you from the hail, and they will eat all your trees that grow out of the field." Now, I don't know if you guys ever seen. You can actually look it up on YouTube. There's the video footage of like when a locust attack a certain city, and it's it could be very devastating. It could be like a cloud sometimes, 5 meters thick and 50 kilometers or something like that wide, and it just swoops and eats everything, like all the green stuff. In fact, in Israel, in the recent times, there was such a thing. I think it was in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And Rav Yitzhak Zilber writes actually something interesting in his book, that there was several, farmers, and one of the farmers who observed the Shemitah year, which is the seventh year, during which he wouldn't harvest and plant. Uh, and he said it's interesting that it's actually recorded that all the farms around him, the locusts ate everything, but specifically on his farm, it was remained untouched. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it was recently in Israel. There was one religious farmer who actually absorbed the Shemitah year. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
I was wondering, only the religious Jews did not get affected with the 10 plagues?
In Egypt, you mean?
Yeah, in Egypt.
No, it seems like all the Jews didn't get affected. Well, actually, no, that's actually a good question, because there is a midrash that says, well, I'll tell you, there is a midrash that says that a lot of Jews were killed during the plague of darkness, the non-righteous ones, and they never came out of Egypt. But if you'll notice, they weren't killed by the plague itself. They were just killed during the plague of darkness. And the reason I think given is because so that the Egyptians would not see them die. But I don't think the actual plagues killed them. Yeah, that's actually a good question, but I don't think. I think it seems like only the Egyptians would get hurt by the plague, because otherwise, if it was both Jews and the Egyptians, then you wouldn't be able to see God's hand in these, in these plagues as clear, right? In fact, by the way, you reminded me something interesting. It says in one place, it says when God executed judgments, when he killed the firstborn, right, of the Egyptians, it says that God did it directly, not through angels, not through like messengers, but specifically directly he killed all the firstborn. But then in the other verse, it says something like this, that God did not give the authority to the destroyer, to like the angel of death, to kill the Jews during the firstborn plague. So it sounds like a contradiction, right? If God himself was the one who killed the firstborn, why does it another verse says God didn't allow the angel of death to kill the Jews? It wasn't the angel of death, it was God himself who would kill the firstborn Egyptians, right? Do you see the question?
Yeah.
So there's an answer actually given by the Vilna Gaon, which was a genius of Vilna, lived around maybe 300 years ago or so, and he says something interesting, that when naturally a certain amount of population dies each day, right, just from natural causes. So during the plague of the firstborn, God took away this ability from the angel of death to kill any of the Jews that were supposed to die naturally anyways on that day. Why? So that there's a clear distinction that on that day only the firstborn Egyptians died and no Jews. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's keep going. Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay, when it says, like, when God says, like, let my people go so that they don't worship me, that means sacrifice, right?
Yeah, either sacrifice, or it could also mean receiving the Torah. Maybe that's also because when we received the Torah, we began to be obligated to keep the 613 commandments, and that's also a form of servitude, right? Keeping God's commandments. So it could be in both. I'm not sure exactly which one, but it could mean both.
Did God wanted us to, like, the Jews to just do either do both, like sacrifice or get the
No, I think the plan was for them to come out and never come back.
Oh,
Yes, but he's saying this to Pharaoh, maybe because Pharaoh, so that his heart will be stubborn and let them out.
right,
Maybe
right.
for that reason. Um,
Because it did sound as if like he was telling Pharaoh that he wanted them to just worship him and then come back.
right, right. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds like, right?
yeah,
Because he said for 3 days journey. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And your houses and the houses of all your servants and the houses of all the Egyptians will be filled, which your fathers and your forefathers, I'm sorry, and your fathers' fathers did not see since the day they were on the earth until this day. Therewith he turned and left Pharaoh. Pharaoh's servants said to him, how long will this one be a stumbling block to us? Let the people go, and they will worship their God. Don't you know that Egypt is lost? Thereupon Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, go, worship the Lord your God. Who are going? It's interesting. He said, even though he said go and worship, but still he's showing some kind of a control. Meaning, who are going? He needs to know, like, who's going, basically, right? Moses said, with our youth and with our elders we will go, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our cattle we will go, for this is a festival to the Lord. Festival. In Hebrew it's called Hag. Um, Hag, it's referred to sometimes the holidays we have, right? Sukkot. But I think Hag is also type of a sacrifice. Hagigah, we have a sacrifice called Hagigah. So I think sometimes when we bring certain sacrifices, it's called a Hag as well.
It's like a party
Um, Maybe because
celebration.
remember some sacrifices are shlamim, where the owner's bringing the sacrifice, they invite friends,
Yeah.
and they actually celebrate. But so maybe it's one of those sacrifices that he meant. Actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what he means by the word Hag in here. Um, you know what? If you hold on just a second, let me bring my commentary book, see if I can see something. Just a second. Hey guys, I'm back. Alright, so let me check it out. Just a second. Uh, check it then. It's 9, right?
Why does he even care though? Because basically, like Moses was saying, we're going to leave permanently. So why does Pharaoh care who will go? Because they will always go.
Well, because Pharaoh wants to show that he's still in control. That's why he asked who's going. I mean, who should I allow to go? You know what? I haven't seen Rashi explain this word Hag, but right now I'm thinking maybe that's it. Kind of makes sense because what is he saying? He's saying our sons and daughters, everybody is going, right? And therefore he explains why, because it's a festival to Hashem, meaning we're all going to be celebrating. As opposed, because if it was just sacrifice, then it would be enough just for males to go, and that's it. Women don't need to bring. Yeah, not daughters, right? Although there are certain sacrifices that women bring, but normally it's an obligation for males, I think. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So he said. So he, meaning Pharaoh, said to them, "So may the Lord be with you, just as I will let you and your young children out. See that evil is before your faces." I mean by evil is before your faces.
Before your faces.
And, it sounds to me like he's saying that basically, I know that you have bad intention, but okay, kind of like that. But by the way, well, in Hebrew the word for evil is ra. That's the word for evil, ra. I saw one commentator say, I think it was Arya Kaplan maybe in his book, that the ancient Egyptians, they worshipped the idol named Ra.
Wow.
So he was saying to them that this god will be in your, like, will punish you basically, or something like that. You heard about this idol? I think that's the famous Egyptian ancient idol, was Ra. His name was Ra.
Wow. Yeah. It's Ra. Yeah, he does sound familiar.
Uh-huh.
It's like the eye god.
I'm not sure, but anyways, yeah, I'm not sure. All right, not so. Let the men go now and worship the Lord, for that is what you request. And he chased them out from before Pharaoh.
Why does it say let the men go? So he only wants men to go and not the children,
Yeah,
son, father.
yeah, that's what it sounds like. He said, basically, uh, just as I will let you and your young children out, see that evil is before your eyes. Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Pharaoh's saying that I know that if I let everybody out, you're not gonna come back. The evil is before your faces, meaning that's what you're planning to do, and that's why he said over here, not so. Let the men go, meaning he wants to hold the children as like hostages, meaning to make sure they'll come back. The Lord said to Pharaoh, "Stretch forth your hand over." I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch forth your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, and they will ascend over the land of Egypt, and they will eat all the vegetation of the earth, all that the hail has left over." So Moses stretched forth his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord let an east wind in the land all that day and all the night. By the time it was morning, the east wind had borne the locusts. The locusts ascended over the entire land of Egypt, and they alighted within all the borders of Egypt. Very severe. Before them there was never such a locust plague, and after it there will never be one like it. They obscured the view of all the earth, and the earth became darkened, and they ate all the vegetation of the earth and all the fruits of the trees which the hail had left over, and no greenery was left in the trees or in the vegetation of the fields throughout the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh hastened. How do you pronounce this? Hastened, right? Pharaoh hastened to summon Moses and Aaron, and he said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. It's interesting that this plague is the seventh plague, the locusts, right? And you know how number 7 is a special number throughout the Torah. So it's interesting that this is the first time Pharaoh actually said that he has sinned during the seventh plague. But now, forgive now my sin, only this time, and entreat the Lord your God, and let him remove from me just this death. So,
Aaron,
yep.
I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he say that I have sinned against God and you?
Mm-hmm.
Really, he sinned against God.
Not only because he's not letting the Jewish people out, right? He's causing the Jewish people suffering. You know, there are certain sins that are just against God. Let's say a sin to not worship God, idols. That's a sin against God, right? But there are certain sins that are against man and God. Let's say you steal or somebody murdered somebody, right? So he sinned against both. And by the way, on Yom Kippur, it's brought down that if a person sinned against another person, God does not forgive him until that person forgives him. So that's interesting. That actually makes sense why he's saying here, forgive now my sin. He's asking Moses to forgive, right? And entreat the Lord your God and let him remove from me just this death. Okay.
And another question, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Whenever something with locusts,
Yeah.
do you usually, would people okay, not even with locusts, in Florida we have hurricanes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do the Jews pray to God for it not to happen? Do they fast? Do they do a certain prayer for it to not happen, like hurricanes to not happen in Florida, where you have Florida? Hurricanes in Florida?
You mean during hurricane or just in general, even before it happens?
During hurricane season in Florida.
Sometimes the rabbis could announce a fast if there's something like really imminent danger. You know, in Florida, I think hurricanes are not really that rare, and it doesn't seem like Florida seems to be used to it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's all over the news maybe, but as far as the number of deaths, it's probably during hurricane season, it's not more than just people dying from the old age. It's not really that.
Okay.
But sometimes it happens, yeah. Sometimes, especially in Israel, if there's like drought, no raining, sometimes the rabbis could announce a certain fast and prayers, and people do it.
Maybe in Puerto Rico too.
Yeah, maybe in Puerto Rico too. Yeah.
Yeah, because we got a big community down there, so it's Puerto Rico is
Mm-hmm.
very what's gonna call it? He's a Russian thing.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the last time I don't know if you guys knowing about the whole island without electrician, so everybody's like,
Oh yeah. I remember. Yeah.
yeah,
Recently, right? It was, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
Now, generally, we have a prayer in the Shmot. We have a prayer for a good year, where we ask for
yeah.
rain, when it's a winter time, and we ask for dew, and for the year itself to be generally a productive and good year.
So with those plagues,
Mm-hmm.
the children of Israel didn't fast because they know that,
This was from God, right? It was
yeah, it was from God.
right. These plagues were for the good, for Hashem to be revealed to the world.
They in a safe place too, so
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Right. But usually, if the rabbi allows it,
Mm-hmm.
things that like the depression or like a plague in the land,
Mm-hmm.
the Jews pray or something like that, do something special
Right, right,
for God to get rid of it.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Moses left Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord reversed a very strong west wind, and it picked up the locusts and thrust them into the Red Sea. Not one locust remained within all the borders of Egypt. If you notice, by the way, when it came to frogs, what happened? They just all died. And it says the Egyptians had to put them into the heaps, and it started smelling and stinking in the land. But with the locusts, he didn't let them remain and die. He actually threw them into the sea and got rid of them completely. Why the difference? So it's brought down that since locusts could be eaten, right? They're edible. Therefore, Hashem took them away so that the Egyptians don't benefit from them, started eating them. But with frogs, I guess they were not considered to be edible. Not like the French people eat them today. But back then they were not considered. Right, they were not considered to be edible, and therefore there would be no benefit, and they just died and stank, basically. All right. Yeah, nowadays, I don't know how these plagues would work out. But anyways, but the Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go out. The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch forth your hand toward the heavens, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt, and the darkness will become darker." Well, what does it mean, become darker? In Hebrew it says "vayamesh hoshech," meaning that it will become like tangible, which is hard to understand. It will be so like thick that basically people will not be able to move. You'll see. So Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness. See, actually over here they say Hoshech, thick darkness over the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see each other, and no one rose from his place for 3 days. You see, they couldn't even rise. Do you see this? But for all the children of Israel there was light in their dwellings. Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go worship the Lord, but your flocks and your cattle shall be left. Your young children may also go with you." So again, he's showing some kind of a control. Right? He says, okay, you all can go, but leave the flock, like your animals, behind. But Moses said, "You too shall give sacrifices and burnt offerings into our hands, and we will make them for the Lord our God." I think he's saying that not only will take our animals, we'll take your animals, you will give us your animals too to bring sacrifice. That's what it seems like to me, at least. ויאמר משה, גם אתה תיתן בידינו זבחים. Let me see commentary Rashi just a second. 25. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Meaning you will give your animals for us to bring sacrifices as well. All right.
Well, why their animal as well? What does that symbolize? What does that mean?
I think it sounds to me like he's basically saying to him that this is not in your control right now. God told us to go sacrifices, and you're saying that you're not going to let our animals go. Not only that, the opposite, you will give your animals. You're also in control of God, yeah. It's not like it's a competition between God and Pharaoh who's going to win. So he's saying even you're going to give your animals to serve, so we can sacrifice it to God. All right. And also our cattle will go with us, not a single hoof will remain, for we will take from it to worship the Lord our God. And we do not know how much we will worship the Lord until we arrive there. What does it mean? We don't know. Meaning, we don't know how many animals we need. It's not like a limited number of animals we'll take. We'll take everything because we don't know how much we'll have to bring sacrifices. I think that's what he means to say. The Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he was unwilling to let them out. Pharaoh said to them, "Go away from me, beware. You shall no longer see my face, for on the day that you see my face, you shall die." There, well, that's what Pharaoh is threatening them basically. He got angry, and he's threatening.
So was it a decree?
Decree by Pharaoh.
Yeah, like it's a law or a decree.
I don't think so. I think it's more just like his anger tantrum.
Okay, so he didn't mean what he said.
I don't think he meant it, but listen to what Moses answered him. Thereupon Moses said, "You have spoken correctly. I shall no longer see your face." Now that is correct.
Well, Pharaoh went after them, so basically he just saw Moses' face again. He did see
Um,
Moses' face.
when he chased after them,
Yeah, when
maybe he didn't see his face. We're not sure about that. Because remember there was a pillar of fire that blocked between the Egyptians and the Jews, right? And this fire stood there until they actually started crossing the sea. So not necessarily he saw his face again.
They don't get too close. Yeah.
Hmm.
no, I don't know if you noticed or not.
Hmm.
Will notice or not. But while the Jews were in Egypt, did they sacrifice God in Egypt throughout their stay in Egypt?
In Egypt, I'm not sure. It's not written in the Torah.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure. You know that Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, right? They sacrificed sometimes to God. So I don't know.